session. Join me now is one of those mayors, Mayor R.T. Rybak of Minneapolis. Mayor, good to see you.
You too. How are you?
Well, Mayor, what did you ask? Because you were able to ask one question.
Well, I asked the president, really, what headline does he want to see this morning? What do you really want? And what he really wants is for us to say that at Christmas time, we should have people come together, and they can in Washington. And the key piece here is the president went out to the American people for the past year, and he said, we can solve this problem, but we have to make a choice. We're either going to put the burden on the middle class, who are already burdened, or we're going to ask those at the very top end to give a little more. There was no question more clear in the last election. Mitt Romney himself said it's the starkest choice we have. The American people spoke. They said solve this problem, and they said solve it in part by starting with the idea that those at the very top have to give a little more. No question was more clear in that election, and the people have spoken. So let's do that. Let's take a president who has 4 years of experience talking to people about the fact that he's willing to compromise if we can get this done. And let's get it done.
Our NBC News Wall Street Journal poll says, yes, they both need to compromise, both sides here. What was your sense of the president's mood about this very issue, that they were going to come to a deal on time, in time before the fiscal cliff hits, and that he was hopeful, or was he not? What was your sense?
Well, the president, I think, was resolved. He knows what he needs to do because he's been talking to the American people, and he knew that the two people in my office were a single mom and a man who's self-employed and caring for his ailing mom. And both of them are not in the mood to get a $2,000 tax increase because the Republicans won't compromise.
Well, on that note there, Mayor, those two, again, residents from Minnesota, what was their reaction to what they heard from the president and the conversation that was had?
They solely agree that the president is absolutely on the right track, and they asked him to hold tough because they don't want their taxes increased anymore, and they don't have to be, because those at the very top should be asked to give a little more. And for the past year, we had a big debate in this country.
Did they want compromise?
They absolutely want compromise. They recognize that the president has done that. Last year alone, the president put, $1 trillion of potential cuts on the table. And as you just heard, that doesn't make all Democrats happy. We've spent 4 years getting the president and Democrats together and having the president do all the tough work within our party to get that done. What is happening with the Republican Party that did they not see the last election? And I think these extreme voices who were resoundingly rejected in the last election should just cool it a little bit and let moderate Republicans come up and do what we've always done, which is compromise.
Along with you, there was a group of mayors that attended that call in person at the White House, and they spoke afterwards. Here's what they said. Take a listen.
This is a time for an investment in cities, not a time to hurt those families in those cities, and Congress needs to act immediately.
The voters in this country spoke loudly and clearly on the president's platform in November. He said exactly what he was going to do.
You're a longtime mayor of Minneapolis, so what kind of impact will you see on the city level right there if no deal is reached here?
We'll see a number of things. Starting in my city, the headquarters of Target and the headquarters of Best Buy, we're going to see a huge challenge at our big companies and on Main Street in our small businesses. The taxes on those small business owners will be raised. The taxes on those who spend money in those businesses will be raised. It'll slow sales. It already has. And inaction by Congress is already the Grinch that's stealing Christmas. What we need to do is recognize that on main streets across this country, big cities and small, the impact of inaction is happening. So while they're playing this little parlor game in Washington about whose blame it is, everybody out here is suffering. Solve the problem. And it's not a pox on both houses. Let's get real here. The president has led. The president won an election by laying out a plan. The American people have spoken. The only thing that's stopping this are extreme voices within the Republicans in the House of Representatives. Let's not just say it's Washington's fault. It's not. It's extreme right-wing Republican voices, only some of that party in the House, that are dominating the moderates who need to come up and say, knock it off, let's get something done.
Mayor R.T. Rybak, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you.
There's been an insurgent attack at the U.S. military base in Kandahar, Afghanistan. It happened this morning after Defense Secretary Leon